For nearly 50 years, America's herring fishermen have been required to take federal inspectors on their boats when they go out to sea. But recently, the government went a step further, asking them to pay their salaries as well. The move has prompted a major legal battle, and at the Supreme Court this fall, the fishermen will ask the justices to reel in government power in a big way. In tonight's Prime Focus, our Devin Dwyer takes a look at the stakes, which could stretch far beyond the ocean.
This is the radar that helps you find the fish, essentially.
More or less. It looks straight under the boat, and it sees whatever's under the boat.
In Cape May, New Jersey, the hunt for North Atlantic herring is a family affair.
You've been doing this for years. You love it.
Yeah, and I don't know how to do anything else.
Stephen Axelson's grandfather emigrated here from Sweden in 1954, helping his seaside community blossom into a base for small family fishing businesses. The waters off the coast are home to schools of long-finned squid and Atlantic herring, a fish used for food and as bait for lobsters.
This would be similar today to what we're working in this.
Bill Bright has been in the herring business here for 40 years.
To actually be a good fisherman, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. If you need financial security, fishing is not for you.
How many herring in pounds will you each catch this year, you think?
Maybe 1 million pounds.
But on a good year before, we would catch 10 million pounds.
Higher insurance rates and fuel costs have eaten into profit margins, and shrinking stocks of fish, likely caused by climate change, mean dramatically lower government caps on what they can catch.
The government says that the herring fishery is overfished. Do you agree with that?
I wouldn't agree with that now. I mean, nobody has more invested than me and Steve, and nobody cares more about this fishery, and nobody cares more about the ocean than we do.
Since 1976, federal marine observers like these have been put on commercial fishing vessels to collect data to help set fishing guidelines.
They're taking notes. They're taking notes on what type of fish you're bringing in,
well,
how much you're throwing back.
Taking in what time you set, where you haul, how much tow wire you have, and then they actually take how much you have and what you have.
For sometimes days at sea, they're in close quarters with the fishermen.
And when I find the fish, they're almost like firemen. They have to respond instantly.
Even sharing bunk beds in a tiny cabin.
So they're right in with your guys.
Right in with the guys.
3 years ago, federal regulators looking to expand coverage of observers at sea moved to require some herring fishermen to directly pay observers salaries up to $700 a day.
We don't mind taking observers. You know, we have for decades now. But to be told to pay for it just isn't right.
By one estimate, that could top 20% of the revenue of a fisherman's catch, which is never a guarantee.
So on some trips, the observer could be the highest paid person on the boat.
Without a doubt.
So at some point, I may not make a herring trip if I got to, take a monitor and pay for them, because it might not be worth it to me and my crew.
Bright and Axelson say the rule could drive them out of business. Congress never mentioned explicitly in the law anything about having them pay observers salaries.
You're worried about the government forcing more fishermen to pay for their own inspectors.
Me and everybody around me is concerned about that, highly concerned about that, because the margins are so tight right now.
The fishermen turned for help to one of the country's most experienced Supreme Court lawyers, Paul Clement, who's argued over 100 cases. This fall, he'll ask the justices to strike down the policy.
So if Congress thinks this is really important, that there be a monitor on every ship, well, then it can pay for a monitor on every ship.
Congress did give regulators at the National Marine Fisheries Service the power to set rules as may be necessary to do their jobs. The government argues in court documents that broad language implicitly allows the agency to have fishermen pay their observers.
We don't want Congress trying to figure out the nitty-gritty details of literally everything.
Meredith Moore is with the Ocean Conservancy and sits on the nation's Marine Fisheries Advisory Committee.
Congress has delegated these sorts of authorities to the federal agencies to be experts and make sure that we're protecting human health and safety and the environment.
Is it fair for fishermen, in your view, to have to pay the salaries of these observers?
I think it's perfectly in line with the authorities that the government has to figure out how to share those burdens.
If the fishermen win, it could have a major impact far beyond the ocean.
This is really about the government, without express authorization from Congress, imposing some additional huge costs on the industry.
Clement says the government's entire system of regulations, from public health to environmental protection, even tax collection, gives federal agencies too much power not directly approved by Congress.
So this is about gray areas.
This is about gray areas, but the problem is, once you say that there are gray areas and then there's a different rule, people start seeing gray everywhere.
For nearly 40 years, the Supreme Court has said in disputes over federal regulations that judges should defer to policy experts when the law is unclear. The practice has become known as the Chevron doctrine, named after the 1984 case. Several of the court's conservatives want it overturned.
I do think that if you got rid of Chevron, you would essentially you'd make the executive branch a little less powerful. You'd make the other two branches a little more powerful.
So what we could lose with this case is the grounding of our government in expertise and science in the way that we interpret laws all over the country.
Now we're taking the fish out of the sea.
As Bill Bright prepares for herring season in November and Stephen Axelson games out the biggest catch,
Sometimes they move and you got to go find them again.
both men say their minds will be on the Supreme Court. Just don't expect to see them there.
Are you both going to be in Washington when this thing is heard, you think? Or are you going to just take it in from out
I'll
here?
probably be fishing.
We'll probably be fishing.
Far-reaching implications there. Thanks to Devin Dwyer for bringing us that.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.